We organized our survey to find out more about Wharton students' daily lives and characteristics. Some questions to think about before we start is how you already perceive the Wharton population, the workload, extracurriculars, sports, and sleep. Our sampling method was multi-stage because we first used stratified sampling by separating Wharton's population into 4 grade levels. And then we used cluster sampling to further cluster the strata by homerooms. We chose this method of sampling so that there would be minimal bias in choosing our sample and so that our sample would still remain representative of the population since the people in a homeroom are relatively diverse. To reduce sampling bias, we used a multi-stage sampling design that incorporated randomized sampling so that there would not be bias as a result of other sampling methods such as convenience sampling. We reduced response bias by including multiple choice whenever possible. When short answer questions are included, people may often answer with a response that deviates from the options that the surveyor had in mind. We reduced non-response bias as much as possible by ensuring that everyone in the homeroom had done the survey.
We surveyed 21 freshmen, 29 sophomores, 19 juniors, and 31 seniors. The difference in the number of students surveyed from each grade can be attributed to different homeroom sizes, and therefore there were different numbers of people that were surveyed. 41% of the respondents were female and 51% were male, which, in the case of some of our questions, such as shoe size and height, is important to know so that we can separate the data based on gender. The first question we asked the respondents was what grade they are in. We found that 21% were freshmen, 29% were sophomores, 19% were juniors, and 31% were seniors. This information aided us in categorizing and stratifying graphs for our other data. We also found that we had a pretty even distribution of ages.
Our question 3 was how many hours of sleep do you get per night on average? The total average amount of sleep was almost the same as the average amount of sleep with students that did extracurricular activities, and the majority of students surveyed participated in some form of extracurricular activities, which was our question 4. Students who did not participate in any extracurriculars had significantly less sleep on average. Students participating in extracurriculars got 52 more minutes of sleep on average. There seems to be a correlation, but we can't assume causation. Our question 5 was which sports do you like to watch, and you could choose all that apply, and the choices were basketball, baseball, and football. The least watched sport is baseball, but the proportion of people who did not watch one of these sports is low, only 14%, which indicates that most students at Walton enjoy watching at least one of these sports. Overall, football is the most popular sport because 60% of the students at least enjoy watching football. Our 6th question was how many hours do you spend on homework per day on average? And the majority was in between 2 hours and 4 hours. There were a couple outliers at 8 to 9 hours. On an average day, based on the difficulty of the school, each student works at least 2 to 4 hours.
Of the people surveyed, most students have 1 or 2 siblings. Having 5 or more siblings is very unlikely because of the suburban developed area that we live in. Since parents do not really need kids to generate income, the amount of kids in a family is lower in East Cobb than the rest of the world. In question 8, most of the students surveyed are males at 59.41%. On the other side, 40.59% of the students surveyed were female. This could or could not be representative of the school. In question 9, the mean height of males is 69 inches and the mean height for females is 64 inches. The bars for the males have a noticeable left skew, and therefore to properly represent the height of the males, the median of 70 inches should be used. The data for the female heights is fairly uniform, so the mean and median are both accurate. An explanation as to why the height data for the females is more uniform is that males tend to grow rapidly and therefore be taller around 16 to 18, while females usually stop growing around 13 to 14, which is the age at which females usually start high school. For shoe size, both male and female data was very unimodal and symmetric. The male shoe sizes had a slight right skew. The median was about 10.5 and the mean was about 10.8. In the case of the skew, it's better to use the median. As for female shoe sizes, there was a slight left skew as shown by the median being 8 while the mean is 7.8. In fact, the female shoe sizes have one outlier of 5.5, which definitely skews the data. Female shoe sizes were pretty close together. The IQR was one size, and the standard deviation was 0.99, almost 1. The male sizes had more varied distribution because the IQR was 1.5 sizes and the standard deviation was 1.45. It's important to note that even though these sizes already look bigger than the females, they are even more so because the same number size is actually bigger in male US shoes than in female shoes.
For a best fit model between height and shoe size, R equals 0.7697. The data displays a positive, strong linear relationship between height in inches and shoe size. R squared equals 0.5925, which means that 59.25% of the variability in the shoe size can be explained by its approximate linear relationship with the height in inches. Our residual plot also shows a relatively random scattering of residuals with few outliers, which means that our best fit model is a pretty good match. Here's the analysis of each of our survey questions and what we found out from each question. From question 1, we didn't really learn much, but we used our results from the first question to develop a way to separate our responses for the rest of the data based on grade level. The same goes for question 2, which asked about age. From the third question, we learned a lot about sleeping habits at Walton, especially the differences from grade to grade. What really concerned us was the very low amount of sleep that Walton students get compared to the nationwide Children's Hospital recommendations for adolescents. Walton students are very involved and focused on their extracurriculars, and question 4 told us what kind of extracurriculars Walton students do at the same time. For question 5, it became evident that sports are very important at Walton, with only 14% of the respondents not watching any of the most popular sports that were listed. Question 5 also told us the percentage of students that watch each of the most popular U.S. sports. From question 6, we hope to gain insight into the workload that Walton students have. And for question 7, we tried to find out about family life by asking the number of siblings each student has. As expected, suburban families are quite small with only about 2 to 3 children each. By asking gender in question 8, we found out the gender ratio between our respondents and also found another category to stratify our data against. We gathered heights in question 9 just to gather information about the growth of Walton students, and we actually found that Walton students matched the national average almost exactly. Males average at 69 inches tall and females average at 64 inches tall. In question 10, we asked shoe size to compare with height and ended up finding a strong correlation.
There was a little sampling error in this survey because the strata or the grade levels weren't exactly the same size. We also had non-response bias that occurred as a result of students who were given the survey and did not turn it in, or those who did not take the survey seriously and put nonsensical answers. There was response bias as well due to the nonsensical errors and also some confusion about the wording. For example, it was not specified if studying counts as homework or if extracurriculars are strictly within school. There also could be some lurking variables. For example, homework times could vary so widely because some students get distracted and it takes them longer than normal to do the same amount of work, or others may report very short times because they haven't really completed all their work. Some people may actually have genetic problems along with the sleeping data. And so overall, if done again, we would take a larger sample size to reduce bias, and then we would also make our questions more specific and also design them in a way that would give less opportunity for survey takers to mess up the data with nonsensical information. Our in-depth survey of the Walton population revealed several details about the students of Walton. How do we compare to the rest of the nation? Well, in many terms, we're just like everyone else. The average height for males was 70 inches and the females was 64, both of which match up exactly with the national averages. The most watched sport was football, which is incredibly popular all over the country, so no surprise there. But we all know that Walton students are driven, and we can see that in our results. Nearly everyone interviewed did some type of extracurricular, only 7% did not, and the majority report doing more than one. The average amount of sleep our students get is also quite low, at around 6 hours a night. The junior grade level had an average sleep time of 4.5 hours per night. 13% of our students spend upwards of 5 hours on their homework. We did get answers as high as 8.5 hours of homework and 1.5 hours of sleep.
Conclusively, surface-level details such as height, interest, and other factors reveal that in many ways, the students of Walton are just as normal as any of the other thousands of high schools in the country. Other factors such as sleep, homework, and extracurriculars show that they work more and sleep less than these same peers. With the concrete proof provided by this survey, we can now work together to bring about a change for the better within our student body and prepare our students for a healthier and happier lifestyle. This has been a Slice of Life by Channel 8 Action News.